Okay, so in this video we're going to make connections to our C-11GS board. We already made a couple of connections. We ran our 12 volts and we also ran our 5 volts and our step and direction to each stepper motor. Now we're going to wire up our home switches and also our VFD connections. So let's get started with that. In our control panel video, we made our connections to our Thnn connector, and we also made our connections to our 5-pin aviation plug. And so now we're going to make these connections in our panel. Now the first thing we're going to do is our 12 volts. Now this 12 volts goes out to our Thnn connector, and we may use this for a future LED or light indicator when we're probing. So here is our 5-pin aviation plug we connected earlier to our control panel, and I just stripped the wire back. It did have a black wire. I rolled it up and put some heat shrink around it here to make it all nice and neat, and then I tinned the ends of the wires. So the first wire is our brown wire, which is our 12 volts, and we're going to land it on our terminal strip here. Like so. And then our next connection is going to be our common, and that is our green wire, and this will be the common for the 12 volts as well as the 5 volts here. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. And our brown wire. Okay. Then our next wire is pin 10 for our C-11GS board. That is our e-stop line, and the common for the e-stop line is this pin 1. Actually, this is a 5 volt input, and so we're sending 5 volts to the e-stop, and then we're getting our 5 volts input into pin 10. So on our C-11GS board, we're going to make the connection to pin 10 here and the corresponding 5 volts. So it'll be the red wire and then the white wire. Okay, that's our 5 volts, and then our red wire is our e-stop, and that's pin 10. That's something new. It can be a pain in the butt sometimes. Okay. Takes care of that. Our next wire is our blue wire, and this is actually an input to the C-11GS from touch plate or touch probe. So we're going to put this on pin 15. So pin 15 is the very last pin here. I went ahead earlier and made up my plugs for my home switches. So I have those here. And basically I just did the same thing, made me a little pigtail from the cable that I'm using for my home switches. And so I'm going to go ahead now and just install these into the panel. Also tin the ends of the wires because this is stranded again. And we'll put the washer on. And then that. got those secured. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and take a minute and put the other two aviation plugs in, and then we'll make our connections. Okay, so you can see I've got my home switches mounted, and I went ahead and kind of labeled the inside of the panel so I know where I'm at. The bottom one here is our X, and X is going to be connected to pin 11. So our 5 volts in pin 11. So our 5 volts is the next pin, and we'll put it on our red wire. We'll put our connect our black wire. Doesn't really matter because it's just a switch, but okay. Our next is our Y, and Y is going to get connected to our pin 12. And so the next one is our 5 volts, which is our red wire, and then pin 12. I would suggest that you lift the board up so that it's flush with the top of this. That way you can read all of your connections and maybe get to them a little bit better. Since you're following along and coming behind me, you can take advantage of some of the things that I didn't see before. Okay. And then last is going to be our 5 volts and pin 13, which are our last two that are left here. So our 5 volts will be our red wire. Okay, I think we're in there now. Usually these will stay down if the wire's in there, so kind of give you a visual of what's going on. Okay, will that fit in there? There we go. Okay, so now we have our home switches connected. So everything on this side of our C-11GS is connected. We have everything on this side connected, our 3 stepper motor drivers. Our next thing is this enable signal, and you can just run a jumper from 5 volts to the enable, or what I'm going to do is use pin 17, the 5 volts from pin 17, and I'm just going to run it up to my enable pin. Reason being is this is the safety charge pump circuit, and as long as the computer is in control, it puts out a constant signal, and that will send 5 volts out of this pin 17. And I think in the past I've had issues where the machine just kind of starts doing crazy things, and so I'm hoping that this will prevent anything like that in the future. So we're going to give that a shot. So the first thing is just run a jumper from 17 to the enable circuit. Okay, so now we have our home switches connected. So everything on this side of our C-11GS is connected. We have everything on this side connected, our 3 stepper motor drivers. Our next thing is this enable signal, and you can just run a jumper from 5 volts to the enable, or what I'm going to do is use pin 17, the 5 volts from pin 17, and I'm just going to run it up to my enable pin. Reason being is this is the safety charge pump circuit, and as long as the computer is in control, it puts out a constant signal, and that will send 5 volts out of this pin 17. And I think in the past I've had issues where the machine just kind of starts doing crazy things, and so I'm hoping that this will prevent anything like that in the future. So we're going to give that a shot. So the first thing is just run a jumper from 17 to the enable circuit like that. Now I have some solid core wire that I showed in the wire video. I'm just going to strip a little bit of this back, and I'm going to use that. Pin 17 is the bottom pin here. I don't need much wire. So I'm using yellow because I probably won't use yellow for anything else, and that'll help me identify this if I choose to change it later. Okay, and that's going to go up to the enable terminal, which I believe, so that wire is taken care of. Get that tucked in there. So all we have left now is our wiring down here that goes over to the VFD. So the first one we're going to tackle here is our 0 to 10 volts, and that goes over to pin terminal T2 on the VFD, and it comes out of the center terminal here. Okay, they've already got the jumper in there. Okay, so we're going to run, I've got purple and green, I don't have purple. So let's run, we'll run blue. So, terminal 2 here. Okay. And that goes right here, 0 to 10 volts. Okay. Our next wire is T1, and that goes over to our ground connection for our 12 volts. So we use green for that. And that is T1. This first terminal here. Make sure I get it on the wire and not the insulation. Now this is the same ground for our 12-volt power supply. So I'm going to just run it up here to this ground terminal. Okay. Tuck those wires in. Okay, that takes care of these two wires right here. Next we have our normally open forward relay. And that's going to go to B5. So next we want to connect voltage to our relays, and we're going to be sending 24 volts, and the 24 volts comes from B2 on our VFD, and we also need to run a jumper to B4. That's an enable to enable the relay, and it's just a jumper. So I'll make those connections. Now it looks like they already have a jumper in here. This was a used drive when I got it. And pull that out because they've got stranded in there. Stranded wire. Okay. And then I'll put mine in there. So I just got a little jumper here. And that's B2. And B4. Okay. And then I'll run that over to my two relays. That is the center terminal. Do I have enough wire here? I'll just cut another jumper here. Okay, so I'm going to put a jumper between the two relays. Now this third relay, when I designed this, I didn't realize, but this third relay could actually be used to turn on your coolant pump instead of a solid state relay. But I'm not sure what the amps are on this, so probably better to go with the solid state deal. But if you needed to turn on something else or enable something, you can definitely do that with that small relay. Some kind of control circuit for sure. Okay. Now that's power going to our relays, our 24 volts. It's just to turn the signal on and off, to tell the spindle to go forward or reverse. And then next, we need to run a wire for our reverse, normally open. And that's relay 2. I believe this is 2 and this is 1, but I may have those wrong. I'm not real sure. I'm going to use a black wire for that, and that needs to go to B5. This is about 22 gauge wire. I'd rather have about 18, but I think it'll work. Okay, so I need to go to B6 on the VFD. Baker 6. Okay, I'm not sure what this wire was for. I'm going to remove it. Okay. Baker 6. That's going to go to relay 2 on the normally open side. Okay. All right, and then next is our forward. And forward is the orange wire, and it goes to B5. I don't have orange. Let's see, what color do I have left? It's B5. Okay. And that will go to the normally open on relay 1 for forward. Okay. Okay, so that should take care of our VFD connections. Let me double check. We have our green wire, which is our ground for our spindle. And then we have the blue wire, which is going to our 0 to 10 volts for our spindle. Then we have our red power wire that goes over to our spindle direction relays. I have those jumpered. And then we have forward for the white wire and black for the reverse. Let me get you a shot of that. Okay. Well, that takes care of our C-11GS connections. Everything is connected. I have just a straight through connector going to out the top for my C-11GS. I think I just picked that up at pass-through cable there at off of eBay somewhere. So that wraps up our C-11GS wiring. Thanks for watching the video. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please feel free to ask questions or leave comments. And most importantly, be safe.